Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
And now,
Talking the News with Noah
on 77 WABC.
Good morning. It is Liz Rattoballi here on the 5 o'clock news hour for Nome late in this Friday, May 2nd. Before we get into the top stories of the day, your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Today it's going to be sunny throughout the day with a high of 80. Tonight and overnight going to be mostly clear with a low of 65. Tomorrow some scattered showers with a high of 80 once again. Sunday more rain for the weekend, high of 74. If you're heading out the door right now over in Paterson, New Jersey, 57 and mostly cloudy. Oyster Bay, Long Island, 56 and mostly cloudy. Same up in White Plains. And right here outside our Midtown studios, 58 and mostly cloudy. So let's start off with your top 5 stories of the day.
This is the Top 5 at 5.
NPR and PBS are losing their federal funding. Problems continue at Newark Airport. Former National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is getting a new gig in the Trump administration. Despite some resident pushback, rents will be rising in the city. A major gang bust on Long Island sees more than 24 arrested. So starting off with the biggest story of the day, National Public Radio and the Public Broadcasting Service will no longer be funded by the public. Following an executive order signed late last night, President Donald Trump is gutting NPR and PBS. Trump argues the services are no longer necessary in the current media environment. In the order, he says government funding of news media in this environment is not only outdated and unnecessary, but corrosive to the appearance of journalistic independence. He's ordering the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or the CPB, to cut all direct funding and decline all future funding. The CPB has until June 30th to fall in line with this order. Both NPR and PBS get their money from a range of revenue streams, including major foundation grants, advertising, and voluntary viewer contributions, meaning that neither is likely to fully shut down if they lose this federal support. On top of the funding changes, Trump ordered all federal agencies to identify and terminate any taxpayer money going to the public broadcasters. The president also put Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of determining whether PBS and NPR are complying with this mandate, saying that no person shall be subjected to discrimination in employment on the grounds of race, color, religion, national origin, or sex. Still committed to the breaking down of DEI. Paula Kerger, PBS's CEO and president, said in a statement last month that the Trump White House, their effort to rescind the funding for public media, would disrupt the essential service PBS and local member stations provide to the American people. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting has sued Trump earlier this week over his move to fire 3 members of its 5-person board, contending that the president was exceeding his authority. Moving over into New Jersey, air travelers still reeling from another day of hefty delays at Newark Liberty International Airport. The FAA said runway construction and staffing shortages were to blame, as well as issues with equipment at Philadelphia Tracon, which oversees airspace operations at Newark.
Therein lies many of your problems that are ongoing and are going to get worse as the summer season progresses and we have far more tourists and flights trying to get in all these airports.
That's aviation expert J.P. Tristani. He talks about those specific shortages in staffing.
It's a compounding problem. These facilities across the country, they had 85% staffing level.
And over on the commuter side, passenger Tanisi Das pretty surprised by those delays.
Honestly, I didn't know that this could even happen. I didn't know that was a thing. So that's pretty concerning. because I've never experienced this before.
And Passenger Junior Martin described how his flight kept getting pushed back.
When we first woke up this morning, it was like a bunch of emails, and it was first delayed until 1:30, and then we checked. We're like, all right, that's fine, give us a little time, and then we check in and go through TSA, another email, delayed until 4:30.
A temporary ground stop was issued yesterday morning. At one point, arrival delays were averaging 4 hours. This comes after technical issues forced a ground stop again on Monday, leading to heavy backups. In some more national news, Mike Waltz being nominated to become the U.S. ambassador to the UN. President Trump announced the nomination on the same day reports surfaced that Waltz would resign as national security advisor. Vice President J.D. Vance addressed the staffing change in an executive sit-down with Fox News.
Why was Mike Waltz let go?
So he wasn't let go. He is being made ambassador to the United Nations, which, of course, is a Senate-confirmed position. I think you can make a good argument that it's a promotion. But we brought Mike on to do some serious reforms of the National Security Council. He has done that. I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also thought that he'd make a better UN ambassador as we get beyond this stage of the reforms that we've made to the National Security Council. You saw the president announce that Marco Rubio is going to step in as interim leader of the National Security Council. So I think the media wants to frame this as a firing. Donald Trump has fired a lot of people. He doesn't give them Senate-confirmed appointments afterwards. What he thinks is that Mike Waltz is going to better serve the administration, most importantly, the American people in that role, and I happen to agree with him.
In a post, Trump said that in the meantime, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as the national security advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York was originally the UN nominee until the White House withdrew it, citing a slim House GOP majority. Waltz, in a tweet replying to Trump's post, wrote, "I'm deeply honored to continue my service to President Trump and our great nation." Waltz, who is 51, previously served in the House representing Florida. Earlier, he served in the U.S. Army as a Special Forces officer. New York City's Rent Guidelines Board is proposing rent increases on rent-stabilized apartments, which is frustrating to some tenants. This week, the panel voted for increases between 1.75% and 4.75% for one-year leases, and between 4.75% to 7.75% for two-year leases. Back to the rent hike. Ching Wong up in Harlem spoke to reporters talking about this increase for these rent-stabilized apartments.
They just slap them whatever amount of increase they can on us just so they make money, and they don't realize that we suffer more than they do.
Tenants really frustrated over this increased proposal.
For tenants that can't afford their rent, we need more robust tenant rental assistance from the city, from the state.
Tenants are hoping for no increases, while landlords say they need the increases to keep up with rising maintenance and repair costs. There will be hearings on the matter before a final vote in June. Suffolk County authorities are announcing the takedown of a major gang linked to a long list of crimes. In one incident last year, a loaded gun fell out of a teen's pocket at the Smith Haven Mall on Black Friday.
They're so dangerous because they don't care who's there. This is Black Friday. You can imagine what the mall's like on Black Friday.
District Attorney Ray Tierney says no one was hurt because a Good Samaritan saw the weapon and kicked it away. Tierney announced the arrest of 28 homegrown rival gang members, saying their crimes included 19 shootings, multiple armed robberies, and drug trafficking all across Suffolk. He also says both gangs used members as young as 15 to avoid any jail time. Over in the city, Mayor Adams is touting his fiscal 2026 budget as, quote, the best budget ever. It's a $115 billion plan that focuses on public safety, affordability, and quality of life issues.
We have not raised any taxes. We have not laid off any employees.
Adams was asked by reporters what will happen if recession hit, and he sounded pretty confident.
We will deal with whatever comes. We have an excellent abilities of shifting and addressing the crises that are in front of us.
The budget includes funding for CUNY, libraries, sanitation, criminal justice reform, boosting the NYPD police force, and an ambitious plan to expand free after-school programs. A man is under arrest in the sexual assault of another man on the subway in Greenwich Village. Police say Brooklyn resident Mohammed Azim is charged with rape, sex abuse, and forcible touching. Azim is accused of making sexual remarks and demanding money from a 27-year-old man on a 1 train near the Christopher Street station last weekend. He allegedly forced the victim to perform a lewd act. Meanwhile, another man is due back in court in connection with another disturbing sexual act on the subway. Felix Rojas charged with attempted rape for engaging in sexual activity with a dead body on an R train at the Whitehall station on April 9th. Governor Kathy Hochul is detailing the state budget agreement and what it means to make the New York City subway system safer.
It's not just about public safety for all of us. It's about human dignity and giving people what they deserve.
While visiting the city, Hochul says the MTA is looking to put what she calls welcome centers for the homeless and mentally ill in the subway to help outreach teams convince the homeless to get some help.
Let people have a place to go to, get warmed up, take care of them, and then be persuasive in saying, now, we have a better option for you. Let's get you evaluated. Let's get you care. Let's get you.
Meanwhile, Hochul's budget calls for a continued increase in NYPD presence on platforms and trains and platform barriers at 100 additional stations and more lighting. Hochul also says the budget calls for a new criminal charge against folks wearing a mask while committing another crime.
Because we've seen in the subway people masking themselves, trying to evade the cameras that we put in place. But if you're hiding under a mask, how are our police supposed to identify you?
And in some more news from Albany in regards to transit, Governor Kathy Hochul showing no signs of halting congestion pricing. Lisa G. reports.
The governor plans to keep moving ahead with congestion pricing in Manhattan, despite the feds threatening to withhold funding if the tolling program doesn't stop by May 21st.
This is our right to make decisions on how we want to manage the flow of traffic, but also execute on our priorities, which is reduce congestion.
Hochul says the cameras are staying on. She added that data shows congestion pricing is working. The feds under President Trump took back approval of the program, and that prompted a lawsuit by the MTA and a battle currently playing out in court now. Lisa G., 77 WABC News.
Long Island Railroad commuters are reacting as Amtrak prepares for tunnel work that could make for some rough rides.
I'm going to be late for work. I have training. That would impact me. That would have delayed me to be classified at work. So, I'm very upset. I actually didn't know about this.
Just commuting alone could be crazy during, the rush hour. So, yeah, I'm going to have to start planning, hopefully working from home.
Commuters say they'll just have to deal with those possible delays since there's really no other way to get to the city.
Driving, but traffic is insane driving to Garden City at least. So there's no alternative. They should give alternative, I guess.
Do a ferry, right? If Staten Island could do it, why can't we get a ferry for Long Island? Wouldn't that be awesome?
With Amtrak planning to do some major Superstorm Sandy tunnel repairs in and out of Penn Station, capacity would be cut by 25%, causing some delays and disruptions. Officials say 2 out of 4 tunnels are crumbling, and Amtrak wants to shut each one down at a time to do round-the-clock work. Work is expected to start next month and would continue for the next 3 years. Governor Kathy Hochul is asking Amtrak to consider some possible shutdowns at night or maybe do some possible weekend work. 77 WABC News time is 5:15. Time to head over to the sports desk this morning. We got James Flippin. Good morning, James.
Well, good morning, Lizzie. And the New York Knicks have punched their ticket to the semifinals in the NBA playoffs. This is the 3rd straight year the Knickerbockers have reached the second round of the playoffs, showing how far the franchise has come in terms of being a perennial contender. This time, the Knicks took down the Detroit Pistons, winning last night's Game 6 on the road by the final score of 116-113. Jalen Brunson answered back after struggling while shooting during the next Game 5 loss, hitting a key three-pointer to give New York the lead for good with just over 4 seconds to play.
Thompson digging in defensively, 8 seconds. Brunson stops on a dime, launches. Oh, yeah! Jalen Brunson buries it!
That audio courtesy of TNT. Tom Thibodeau says Jalen Brunson is one of the best.
Jalen shot, what can you say? Timely, he's at his best when his best is needed. He's done it all year. That's what makes them special.
Brunson says the shot was never in doubt from his perspective.
If it doesn't, we hopefully go in overtime. We had a lot of time left in the game, but they've all did good one, so that's all I care about.
Brunson led all scorers with 40 points. Next up for the Knicks, a second-round series with the rival and defending NBA champion Boston Celtics. That series beginning Monday in Boston. The Clippers stayed alive in their first-round series with the Nuggets, winning last night's Game 6 in L.A., 111-105. James Harden poured in 28 points to rebound from a quiet Game 5. Game 7 will be Saturday night in Denver. Tonight in the NBA playoffs, the Rockets will try to stay alive and force a Game 7 against the Golden State Warriors. Stanley Cup playoffs, the Toronto Maple Leafs defeated the Ottawa Senators 4-2 to win that series. The Vegas Golden Knights beat the Minnesota Wild 3-2 and also win that series in advance. The Oilers topped the LA Kings 6-4. Edmonton secures that series. The Avalanche defeated the Dallas Stars 7-4 to force a Game 7 in that series. And also in the NHL, for local fans, the Rangers appear to have their sights set on their next head coach. According to ESPN, the Blue Shirts are in advanced contract talks to make former Penguins coach Mike Sullivan their next head coach. Baseball, the Yankees had the day off to start up a weekend series with the Rays at the stadium tonight. The Mets fell to the Diamondbacks 4-2, dropping 2 of 3 to Arizona. Juan Soto did homer twice, including his first Citi Field homer, and the Mets will hit the road for a weekend series with the St. Louis Cardinals. Also, Lizzie, one of the most exhilarating events of the sports calendar going down tomorrow at Churchill Downs, the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby. And that is sports here on 77 WABC. I'm James Flippin.
77 WABC News Time is 5:20. In some national news, Mike Waltz being nominated to become the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. President Trump announced the nomination same day that reports came out that Waltz would step down as national security advisor. Here's State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce addressing the news as it broke.
Do you know how long he's going to be serving in both roles?
It is clear that I just heard this from you. This is the magic.
No heads up that this.
Well, I have some insights as to the potential of certain things that might happen. But when the president, and this of course is all presidential decisions, right? So I'm with the State Department. It is, as I think would be clear to all of you, you don't want to get ahead of your skis in drawing conclusions or speculating about what may occur. And you can have a general sense of what's possible, and then you see that manifest usually. But I think the one thing I've learned is that things don't happen until the president says they're going to happen. So the fact that is, which was obviously Truth Social. Yeah, so that is the miracle of modern technology and the social media.
Waltz did face some scrutiny for mistakenly adding a reporter to a Signal group chat that discussed plans for a military strike. In a post, Trump said that in the meantime, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will now serve as the national security advisor while continuing leading the State Department. Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York was the UN nominee. That was up until the White House withdrew the nomination, citing a slim majority of the GOP in the House. More from the Trump White House. They're asking the Supreme Court to revoke legal protections of thousands of Venezuelan immigrants after a Trump-appointed judge blocked the White House from using the Alien Enemies Act to deport those it claims are members of a violent Venezuelan gang. Tony Waterman reports.
Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr. said invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport Venezuelans was unlawful and beyond the scope of the statute. The law allows for the detention and removal of people from countries the U.S. is at war with and has only been invoked 3 other times: the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. The Trump administration has argued that the Tren de Aragua gang has invaded the U.S. and is working with the Venezuelan government. Earlier this month, the Supreme Court paused deportations under the Alien Enemies Act without due process. Tony Waterman, Texas.
President Trump says we always need to be one nation under God. He spoke from the Rose Garden at the White House, marking the National Day of Prayer.
We're bringing back religion in our country, and we're bringing it back quickly and strongly. Because for America to be a great nation, we must always be one nation under God, a phrase that they would like to get rid of, the radical left. But, Ben, I don't think we're going to let them get rid of that, right?
The president highlighted some of the actions he's taken so far.
I signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism. It's a big thing. And I set up a DOJ task force, which is really a big thing, and, Dan, you're going to be involved in it, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. You haven't heard that, but there's anti-Christian bias also. And in just a few moments, I'll also be signing an executive order creating a presidential commission on religious liberty, which is really why we're here.
Trump noted that his religious advisors work very closely with him.
And, they work right out of the White House. They've never done that. That's never been done before. No other president allowed that. I think, they say separation. They say separation between church and state, they told me. I said, all right, let's forget about that for one time. We said, really, the separation? I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. But whether there's separation or not, you guys are in the White House where you should be, and you're representing our country, and we're bringing religion back to our country.
House Speaker Mike Johnson was also in attendance.
I want to thank a man of incredible faith who's with us, Speaker Mike Johnson, for being here. He's done an incredible job. Thank you, Mike, very much. We're working very hard on a great, big, beautiful bill, and we're trying to come up with a name. And I said, why don't we just call it the Great, Big, Beautiful Bill? That's what everyone...
Trump did take some time to talk about the economy, which he says is directly tied to faith.
This is a religious ceremony to me, but that's part of the religion. Because if your taxes go up 68%, you might give up your religion. You might have no choice. You'll be working too hard to try and make it. And that's the Democrats. That's what they'll give you. They'll vote against it. It's not even believable. It's called Trump derangement syndrome because, honestly, everything in there is good for Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else.
The spending bill he mentioned is currently making its way through the Senate before it heads back to the House. And more from the White House. President Trump is questioning whether undocumented immigrants deserve due process. While delivering the commencement speech at the University of Alabama yesterday, Trump criticized any judges who have blocked his administration's efforts to deport alleged illegal immigrants. He went on to congratulate the university's women's track and field team for its 2 conference title wins this year. Trump used the opportunity to highlight his administration's efforts to ban transgender women from women's sports. He also shouted out the school's legendary former football coach, Nick Saban, saying the University of Alabama has a brand, and that brand is winning. Over down in Florida, they're capturing 1,100 illegal aliens in Operation Tidal Wave, the largest immigration sweep ever conducted in the Sunshine State. Governor Ron DeSantis says this should send a message to every person that Florida is not a safe haven for criminals.
This has been the first of its kind throughout the United States. This is the largest immigration enforcement operation that we've seen in quite some time throughout the entire country.
DeSantis says there's zero tolerance for those living in the shadows.
These are people that should have never been in our country. Some of these people had been previously deported. Some of these people had been alerted on the Biden administration, but this is something they didn't want to have to do.
Meanwhile, critics say those arrested are entitled to due process under the U.S. Constitution. In some health news, Americans are being urged to pay attention to their mental health this month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which has been observed in the U.S. since 1949. A leading doctor in the U.S., Dr. Jen Broll of the American Academy of Family Physicians, urging people to find a healthy way to cope with stress. Experts recommend having a healthy work-life balance and finding a support system to avoid any social isolation. In economic news, the April jobs report is due to be released this morning. The consensus among most analysts is that today's report will show hiring slowed in the start of the second quarter. The forecast is for 133,000 new jobs versus 228,000 in the month before. The report comes out this morning at 8:30. And in some more financial economic news, Microsoft has announced the significant price increases for the Xbox. The company says market conditions are causing the increase. The consoles are made in China and tariffs are making parts more expensive. Some of the price increases include an $80 increase in the Xbox Series S and a $100 increase in the price of an Xbox Series X. Some controllers will increase by $5. First-party games will also jump by $10. Prices on other games will remain unchanged. 77 WABC News Time is 5:31. Liz Rattoballi filling in for Noam Laden. More news when we come back here on the 5 o'clock hour on 77 WABC.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour. Sponsored by Secure Cash, LLC. Talking the news with Noam Laden. All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now, Talking the News with Noam on 77 WABC.
It is not Noam Laden, it's Liz Rattoballi here on this Friday, May 2nd. Good morning, and before we dive back into the headlines, your forecast from the 77 WABC Weather Center. Today it's going to be sunny throughout the day with a high of 80. Tonight and overnight going to be mostly clear with a low of 65. Tomorrow, scattered showers with a high once again of 80. And Sunday, the rain continues. Rainy weekend with a high of 74. If you're heading out the door right now over in Paterson, New Jersey, 58 and mostly cloudy. Out on Long Island in Oyster Bay, right now 57 and mostly cloudy. Same goes for up in White Plains, 57 and cloudy. And right outside our Midtown studios, 57 and some mist outside. Jumping into some national news, the murder retrial of Karen Reed resumes in Massachusetts as she stands accused of killing her boyfriend John O'Keefe by striking him with a car after the night of drinking. The jury heard testimony from Jennifer McCabe, a family friend of O'Keefe, who was with Reed when his body was found.
We have to go to Fairview. A lot of the could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Just she was on repeat.
What's being described as the star witness talked about Reed and what she was saying that fateful night.
Jen! And then she's screaming that John didn't come home.
Reed's defense team claims she's the victim of a cover-up and is being framed for the murder of O'Keefe, a Boston police officer. The trial ended on Thursday with a judge warning Reed's lawyers about their repeated and deliberate rule violations, although she allowed the defense to call crash reconstruction experts to the stand. Sean Diddy Combs is confirming he rejected a last-minute plea deal ahead of his sex trafficking trial set to start this next week. During a final pre-trial conference in Manhattan, a federal judge asked the disgraced rapper and music mogul if he rejected the offer made by prosecutors, to which he replied, "Yes, I do, Your Honor." Little is known about the deal, which first came to light last week, other than it included a lighter sentence in exchange for a guilty plea. The 55-year-old is charged with sex trafficking and racketeering, accused of abusing and coercing women for years. Jury selection in Diddy's trial is set to start this Monday. He could get life in prison if convicted. Russell Brand is set to appear in a London courtroom today on rape and sexual assault charges. The English actor and comedian is facing accusations from 4 women for alleged crimes that happened between 1999 and 2005. Court documents show Brand is accused of touching one woman's breast without her consent and dragging another woman towards a men's bathroom. The 49-year-old Brand is also accused of orally raping one of the women. He denies all allegations. And a woman is accusing Harvey Weinstein of rape. She's detailing her experience with him on the witness stand during Weinstein's sex crimes retrial. Miriam Haley, a former production assistant, took the stand this week saying she met the star Hollywood producer in 2003, claiming he made comments about her legs and asked her for a massage. Then in 2006, Haley says while working on one of Weinstein's projects, she says Weinstein sexually assaulted her inside her Lower Manhattan apartment. Haley gave the same testimony at Weinstein's first trial in 2020, in which his conviction was overturned. Weinstein maintains his innocence in a retrial involving 3 accusers. A man who was airlifted from Mount Fuji last week was rescued for a second time over the weekend when he went back to go get his phone. Mark Mayfield has that story.
The man from China was rescued from Japan's most iconic peak on April the 22nd after getting altitude sickness. 4 days later, rescuers had to go get the man again after he went back up to find his phone. Another climber called police after finding him unable to move. The rescue led to outrage on social media, with calls for the man to have to pay the costs to bring him back down. I'm Mark Mayfield.
In some more local news, 1 man is dead, 3 other people critically injured in a Jersey City apartment fire. Fire officials say it happened early yesterday in a second-floor kitchen, trapping 4 people inside their Summit Avenue apartment.
We woke up around 3 o'clock to somebody screaming, essentially saying, "Help." The flames were intense.
That was a neighbor saying it was a traumatic experience. A man and a woman, both in their 40s, and 2 kids under age 10 were all rushed to the hospital. That's where the man was pronounced dead. This neighbor was shocked by what happened.
It's a tragedy, when these things happen, especially when you're caught off guard in the middle of the night. Can only imagine what they were going through.
3 firefighters suffered minor burns and smoke inhalation, while 18 residents were forced out of 6 apartments above 3-story buildings, the first-floor laundromat. A new startling report shows that New York may need to change their slogan from Excelsior to Exodus. More than 125,000 New Yorkers have fled for Florida in recent years, taking nearly $14 billion worth of income out of the Empire State. Nearly 1/3 of those former New Yorkers flew down to Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward counties. Escapes to those 3 counties alone between 2018 and 2022 resulted in an approximately $10 billion reduction in New York City's adjusted gross income. The report chalked up the mass migration to factors including lingering effects of the pandemic, as well as general affordability, quality of life concerns, and safety. The percentage of New Yorkers who said life in the city was, quote, good or excellent, dropped from 50% pre-pandemic to just 30% last year. However, not everyone is flocking to the sunny south. Many have stayed in the northeast. Long Island increased its population by some 138,000 New York City expats during the same 5-year period. That's resulting in another $11 billion drop in adjusted gross income for the city between Nassau and Suffolk counties. New Jersey Transit and its riders are trying to come up with alternate ways to get to work if engineers really walk off the job in the middle of the month. Noam Layden has the latest.
New Jersey Transit warning train riders that engineers could really walk off the job May 16th.
For those folks who can afford to work from home, should the strike become a reality, we ask them to work from home.
That's New Jersey Transit's president, who says they'll substitute rail service with buses where they can, but that will only help around 20% of train commuters. So have riders come up with alternative plans?
Not really.
Engineers battling with New Jersey Transit over a new contract and are asking for more money than the transit agency wants to pay them. Noam Layden, WABC News.
The New York Attorney General's office is starting an investigation into a recent deadly police-involved shooting in Brooklyn. Jumani Wright was fatally shot by officers this past Tuesday night after cops say he nearly struck an NYPD lieutenant while in a vehicle. The lieutenant was part of a roadblock aimed at getting Wright to stop speeding on the Belt Parkway during a pursuit. Police believe Wright had stolen a Porsche in Pennsylvania, and he refused to pull over when he was first contacted by police officers. Alleged CEO shooter Luigi Mangione is at the center of a new musical in San Francisco. New Yorkers are reacting.
Theater is art, and I think that if folks want to express themselves in a healthy manner about the situation, then I think that's perfectly fine.
It's insane. That's crazy. Why? Why give them credit? No. It's crazy.
I don't know. I wonder who's writing the musical. That seems like a quick turnaround.
The 26-year-old accused of shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Midtown Manhattan late last year is the subject of the 60-minute musical called Luigi.
I think that's ridiculous.
Your first name?
That's too much publicity for him for one guy. He had enough already. I think that's just way too much.
I don't think anyone who, allegedly, I have to say, right, it hasn't had a trial yet, commits a heinous crime like that. To me, that would be off limits.
Creators say the musical will follow Mangione's time at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, with real-life cellmates Sam Bankman-Fried and P. Diddy by his side. For anyone who likes comedy and show tunes, they say Luigi will be your new favorite felony. The show runs from June 13th through the 28th. A suburban New York county is boasting about big dollars, mostly from movies and television shows filming there. Andrew Whitman reports.
Turns out Westchester County has become a bit of a mini East Coast Hollywood. The county's Office of Tourism and Film says the film and TV sector contributed more than $924 million to Westchester's economy in 2024. And jobs from all that filming were up 50% over the year before. The county says the end of the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA strikes helped, as did the volume of shoots in the county, including portions of Severance, The Gilded Age, Law and Order, Poker Face, and FBI Most Wanted that had clapboards clapping in the county last year. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
New Yorkers marking the International Workers' Day rallying for workers' rights. Several demonstrations were held yesterday here in the city on May Day, also known as International Workers' Day. Over 1,000 people gathered in Foley Square to demonstrate in support of unions and public service employees before marching near City Hall. Other demonstrations took place around the city, aiming at what demonstrators call the Trump administration's war on federal employees and immigrants. 77 WABC News time is 5:45. Time to head over to the sports desk with James Flippin. Good morning, James.
Lizzie, the New York Knicks have punched their ticket to the semifinals in the NBA playoffs. It's the third straight year the Knickerbockers have reached the second round of the playoffs, showing how far the franchise has come in terms of being a perennial contender these days. This time, the Knicks took down the Detroit Pistons, winning last night's Game 6 on the road by the final score of 116-113. Jalen Brunson answered back after struggling while shooting during the Knicks' Game 5 loss, hitting a key three-pointer to give New York the lead for good with just over 4 seconds left to play.
Thompson digging in defensively, 8 seconds. Brunson stops on a dime, launches. Oh, yeah! Jalen Brunson buries it. Knicks lead by 3. The Brunson burner ignited.
And that audio courtesy of TNT. Brunson did lead all scorers with 40 points. Next up for the Knicks, a second-round series with the defending NBA champion Celtics, and that will begin Monday in Boston. The LA Clippers stayed alive in their first-round series with the Denver Nuggets, winning at home last night, Game 6, 111-105. James Harden poured in 28 points for the Clips, rebounding from a quiet Game 5. Game 7 of that series Saturday night in Denver at Ball Arena. Tonight in the NBA playoffs, the Houston Rockets will try to stay alive and force a Game 7 against the Golden State Warriors. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Toronto Maple Leafs defeated the Ottawa Senators 4-2, winning that series. The Vegas Golden Knights beat the Minnesota Wild 3-2, also winning that series and advancing. The Edmonton Oilers topped the Kings 6-4. So the Oilers move on, they advance. The Avalanche defeated the Dallas Stars 7-4, forcing a Game 7 in that series. And also in the NHL, local hockey fans will be interested to know the Rangers look to be ready to hire their next head coach. ESPN says the Blue Shirts are in advanced contract talks to potentially make former Penguins coach Mike Sullivan the guy behind their bench going forward. Baseball, the Yankees were off as they start up a weekend series with the Rays at the stadium tonight. The Mets fell to the Diamondbacks 4-2. Juan Soto with 2 solo homers, including his first at Citi Field, but the Mets dropped 2 of 3 from Arizona, and they now hit the road for a weekend series with the St. Louis Cardinals. And it'll be the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby, the race for the run for the Roses, I should say, tomorrow. That'll be around 6:57 Eastern Time. And according to USA Today, journalism is the favorite at 3-1 odds. And for 77 WABC Sports, I'm James Flippin.
In some more national news, the White House says if the policies of former President Biden and Vice President Harris continued, it would have ended the American Republic. That's according to Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller during a press briefing yesterday morning.
And the only thing Americans want to hear from Kamala Harris is an apology for joining Joe Biden, and remember, she was the border czar, joining Joe Biden in aiding and abetting the invasion of our country.
Miller said Trump is putting America first.
With the tax cuts, the regulation cuts, the energy price decrease, and everything else that President Trump is doing to unleash this era of American prosperity and prevent the road we were on to get off that road of financial ruin and doom, means that it will be cheaper than ever to make and manufacture in America.
Miller said the previous White House should be held accountable.
It is an eternal stain on the Democrat Party. Every day we read another story. Every day we arrest another alien they let into this country who raped a child, who beat a woman.
He criticized the previous administration's border and economic policies. This coming as President Trump marked his first 100 days back in office earlier this week. And also, Vice President Harris gave a speech at a gala in San Francisco where she went after Trump's tariff policies. In some international news, Ukraine and the U.S. have signed a minerals agreement. NBC's Matt Bodner reports that President Trump had previously insisted that Ukraine pay back the U.S. for aid it's provided since the start of the war with Russia.
The agreement, as signed, makes no mention of any debts to the United States for past aid, and instead it focuses exclusively on joint investment in forward-looking mineral extraction projects. Furthermore, the agreement provides for complete Ukrainian control over these projects, with the United States playing a role more akin to a co-beneficiary.
Bodner says one provision Kyiv has been pushing for is not in the agreement.
That would be security guarantees from the United States vis-a-vis Russia. However, Ukrainian officials have said that the United States, in addition to hard cash, has the option to provide additional military assistance to Ukraine as part of their contribution to this mineral fund.
Bodner says, according to Ukrainian officials, the U.S. has the option of providing more military assistance to Ukraine.
That would particularly cover air defense systems that are used to protect the cities and have saved so many civilian lives throughout the war. But broader military aid, that is something that will be part of the larger negotiation effort, and that is still ongoing.
The deal will provide the United States access to new investment projects meant to develop Ukraine's natural resources, such as aluminum, graphite, oil, and natural gas. It comes almost 2 months after a White House meeting between Trump and Ukraine President Zelensky derailed talks on the deal. Chinese state media is reporting that the United States has been actively reaching out to China to start trade negotiations. NBC's Peter Alexander reports that President Trump claims talks are already underway and Americans just need to hang in.
For the first time, President Trump is acknowledging his triple-digit tariffs on China could cause shortages of consumer goods and higher prices, after business leaders have raised alarms about supplies of everything from groceries to toys.
Alexander reports Trump is expressing optimism about agreements with other trading partners.
Overnight, the president calling into a town hall, saying that deals with other countries are in the works, but that the U.S. is in a prime position.
Reports say there is still uncertainty about the potential effect of tariffs.
It comes amid new warnings about the U.S. economy that shrank in the first 3 months of this year, according to Commerce Department data. The president blaming his predecessor, who was in power for the first 20 days of the quarter, for the decline.
Trump told reporters that maybe at Christmas, children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple bucks more. China says right now there are no trade talks, and it will only start discussions if the 145% tariff on its products is lifted. Meanwhile, White House Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says deals with other trading partners are expected to be finalized in the coming weeks. New legislation could eliminate the pretty penny. Lisa Ritchie has more.
And every time it rains, pennies from heaven.
Count your pennies. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley and Utah's Mike Lee are sponsoring the Make Sense, Not Sense Act. Each penny costs 4 cents to make. If passed, the bill would stop the minting of the United States penny. I'm Lisa Ritchie for 77 WABC News.
The Supreme Court is considering whether a bid to create the nation's first taxpayer-funded religious charter school can move forward in Oklahoma. NBC's Laura Jarrett reports the High Court heard arguments in the case yesterday.
Critics say this type of plan chips away at the separation between church and state and ultimately could change how funds are used for public education nationwide. Oklahoma's Attorney General Gentner Drummond, a Republican, sued to block the school's approval.
If the Supreme Court clears the way for St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School to join Oklahoma's charter school program, it would then eventually allow other religious schools to apply for public funding as well. Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond, a Republican, says Oklahomans don't want to fund religious schools.
They don't want the state to get in the business of funding one religion, because if we fund one, then we have to fund all. And it's just a slippery slope.
Justice Amy Coney Barrett has recused herself from the case, which means that a split 4-4 decision is possible. If that were to happen, an Oklahoma Supreme Court ruling blocking the proposal would remain in place. 77 WABC News Time 5:59. Time for some final headlines. Death metal pioneer Brian Montana was killed in a shootout with California cops. Montana, 60 years old, guitarist for the band Possessed, died in a shootout with cops after he pulled a gun on a neighbor during an argument. One neighbor sustained non-life-threatening injuries in the shootout, during which Montana took cover behind parked cars and landscaping, used 3 different guns to shoot at cops for almost half an hour. The argument began over tree clippings from a neighbor's yard, according to the San Fran Chronicle. At 5:52, police received a 911 call about a man with a gun. He is the second member of the man to be shot. The vocalist Jeff Becerra was shot twice in a 1989 robbery, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. That's your news this Friday, May 2nd. I'm Liz Rattoballi, filling in for Noam Layden. Lionel filling in on the Sid and Friends show coming up here, 77 WABC.